Hi, and welcome to A Better You, your one-stop shop for everything languages, self-care, self-improvement, and self-discovery. Today we are doing a language app review. So as you may know, if you are subscribed, then I am learning several languages. So I am on 6, I believe. So that's Turkish, Kurdish, Persian, French, Dutch, and German. So the kind folks over at Ling have offered me a 2-month premium membership to have a proper test and a proper play of their language app. And I'm really glad they did because my Persian has vastly improved as a result of their service. Some of the things that I really love about the Ling app are:
there are loads of languages in this app, which is really particularly fantastic if you're learning multiple languages. The way I like to use apps is that I use these same apps for all of the languages I'm learning wherever possible. And this particular app would allow me to do that for 5 of the 6 languages that I was studying. It's easy to use and to find the content, and there is definitely no tutorial needed with the Ling app. I also imagine it would take a good year or 2 before you ran out of content. There's absolutely loads of options there. And there's also loads of different ways to learn. So for example, you've got games, you've got flashcards, and you've got challenges. Plus there is a fantastic speech engine within the app, which means that you can practice your speaking as well. You can also slow down the pronunciation on that speech engine, which is really fantastic to make sure that you're understanding why you're maybe pronouncing things wrong. The writing tool was particularly useful. I'm learning Persian, and learning the alphabet is a really key part of that. And learning to produce the alphabet, that is, write the alphabet, is particularly challenging. And I did notice in the Arabic section you can practice writing, which is really fantastic. There is also a fantastic section on sentence sorting where you can decide the order of the sentences. Now, if you're learning a language that has a different subject, verb, object order than your native tongue, this is particularly useful. I think I would have found this really useful for Turkish right at the start.
One of the things that I would really like to see added to the Ling app are:
the chatbot sometimes dropped me before I spoke or didn't give me enough time to speak, which was a little bit frustrating, though I think potentially I would get used to this over time and potentially find ways around it. I also couldn't exit lessons sometimes, so I did find a workaround for this, and that was just to say that you'd like to start over, and then it keeps your progress regardless. There's no real explanations of grammar. I'm not sure this necessarily bothers me, being really frank. If you're practicing the grammar and you get used to the order, then sometimes you don't really need the explanation, and this is often the way when we're learning our native language. However, potentially for some people who like to see that explanation, that might be a nice addition. The pictures in the sections weren't always easy to understand, and it would have been nice to see, I suppose, clearer pictorial descriptions of what we were trying to guess. And the final thing was, I suppose it would help to say what was wrong with your pronunciation. So sometimes the speech engine would correct me on my pronunciation, and I didn't necessarily know what it was correcting me on. It would be great to see an explanation as to exactly which pronunciation part was wrong in the future app updates.
And I say this about every single app, and I kind of know why this is the case as well, but it would be lovely to see Kurdish as one of those rare languages in the future, especially since it's such a good app to learn with. So now what I'd like to do is just take you through how I would see Ling being used for a beginner, for an intermediate learner, and for an advanced learner.
Ling for beginners is probably the best, I think. It's sensible and organised, it has a range of different topics, it has an immediate focus on writing, reading, listening and talking. And especially for rarer languages, I feel like it's a really intuitive way to learn languages. I actually really wish I had had it there when I was learning Turkish. I think it would be particularly useful when you are a beginner in languages that have a different grammar structure or a different alphabet to your native tongue. If you're a beginner, I don't think you really need to use it in any special way. I think you could literally just follow the app and you would probably progress quite well in language. From an intermediate perspective, I found that it really challenged me to perfect my pronunciation in languages. Sometimes I don't think I focus enough on the speaking aspects of languages because I am quite introverted. and I compared the pronunciations to Turkish where I'm more confident, and it was absolutely spot on from a speech, language and pronunciation perspective. I think as an intermediate learner, you might find topics that you haven't really covered yet, which might be useful, but I think the real added value here of the Ling app for intermediate learners would be perfecting your pronunciation without having to speak to native speakers. For advanced, I'll first put out a disclaimer. I'm actually not usually one to say that apps help advanced learners very much, and that's because usually as a more advanced learner, I would go to Netflix, I would go to YouTube, I would go to reading novels. I would really put myself in that native space and try to develop by things that are more naturally something you would do in any language. That said, it is really good practice. So I think this is the same thing that I use Turkish. I use Mondly for Turkish often just to practice. And I actually think this app would potentially be better for. I also noticed that in the description section, it had more advanced sentences. Whereas a lot of apps, when you get to the more advanced sections, all that they're more advanced in is a topic. So it could be that they cover business topics, for example, as opposed to introductions. But actually the sentence structures are no more advanced. I did notice that Ling had some connective sentences within there. So, for example, would include because of this at the end of a sentence. And I actually thought that was a real added value because when you do have a different grammar structure, it can sometimes be hard to know how to order your sentences. And I really found this with Turkish. I think this would have been really useful in my Turkish learning journey.
If you'd like to test the Ling app, if you'd like to see if it works for your language learning, then you can find a link in the description to download the app. That's available on Google Play, on Apple's iTunes, and just on your normal PC. So definitely do have a look at that. With all that said, that's the end of our video today, and we will be back to our usually scheduled content back on the language history series next week. So definitely do subscribe to find out more about the history of languages. Can't wait to see you next week. Please do like this video and share it with anybody that you think might find it useful. Thanks for watching.